The U.S. Senate is delaying its holiday recess to try and pass funding for Ukraine and Israel. The House, however, is heading home. Our Washington correspondent, Cassie Simeon, joins us live from Washington, where Democrat Sydney Kamlager-Dove, a California freshman, is looking back on her first year in office. Good morning, Cassie.
Good morning, Giselle. This year has been anything but average when it comes to Congress. But for freshman lawmakers like Kamlager-Dove, this is all they've really ever known in their young careers here on Capitol Hill. Kamlager-Dove and I sat down for a one-on-one interview this week in her office, where she told me we have been conditioned as a society to accept the chaos and that Democrats are trying to cut through the noise and actually legislate.
Well, watching the 15-round fight for the speakership certainly told me that I need to come to this job with a great deal of patience.
That's Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove. The Los Angeles Democrat has had anything but a traditional rookie year on Capitol Hill, which saw Republicans oust their handpicked speaker and spend weeks trying to elect a new one.
The biggest challenge that I've had to face is separating the kabuki, the theater, the pomp and circumstance, the crazy, the chaos, and the chaos agents from people who actually really do want to work.
In the state legislature, Kamlager-Dove focused on domestic policy issues such as reproductive rights and criminal justice reform. But as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, she has had to expand her focus to the global stage. With wars raging in Ukraine and Israel, Kamlager-Dove says aiding U.S. allies abroad is critical to America's national security.
The last administration was incredibly isolationist, and they separated us from our allies. President Biden is essentially trying to clean up a lot of that mess and re-engage with countries. We had an aid package to Israel that passed, not with much bipartisan support because it was conditional. And we have a Ukraine aid package that is being held up because Republicans want to conflate our border security issues, which are incredibly important and warrant their own conversations separate from a supplemental package to Ukraine.
Republicans remain resistant to any aid for Ukraine without border security concessions from President Joe Biden. Democrats have called Republican demands draconian. Some of your Democratic colleagues have expressed concern that they're worried the Biden administration will give away too much to Senate Republicans in order to get this Ukraine aid passed through the House and the Senate. Is that a concern that you share?
It is a concern that I share. I and a number of members from the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, especially those that are in Los Angeles, are deeply concerned with this border security package that will continue to dehumanize and criminalize many of the folks that live in our communities right now. So I do think it's important that we talk about it. I also think it's important that we separate it out from this Ukrainian aid package.
Kamlager-Dove is especially critical of her Republican colleagues who held up legislation.
I love the fact that I've heard Republicans say, we haven't been able to achieve anything. We have nothing that we can campaign on. I talked to a number of Republicans who say they are incredibly tired of these MAGA extreme Republicans holding their conference hostage. My question to them is, where is your Constitution to stand up and fight for the American people rather than Donald Trump?
With an election year about to begin, Kamlager-Dove says Democrats will be ready to fight for control of the House.
Of course we're going to be fighting to make sure that child care funding is safe and stabilized. Of course we're going to be pushing back on a lot of this demonic posturing around public education and higher education. Of course we're going to step in and make sure that another continuing resolution is passed. And of course we're going to work to make sure that we win the House.
Now, the House is not scheduled to return until after the new year, and lawmakers will have a lengthy to-do list beyond this foreign aid package. They will also need to agree on at least a partial funding of the government before that first deadline on January 19th, Giselle.
Boy, there is just so much on the line, and obviously Congress heading home. And Kamlager-Dove, echoes the sentiments of many Democrats who say the border security funding should not be conditional to the aid to Ukraine or Israel. What is it going to take to get a deal done, Cassie, if most Democrats feel that the GOP demands are draconian?
Well, the reality here is that there will be no deal that Republicans are going to sign on without some concessions from the president. What that deal looks like at the end of the day remains to be seen. There's a lot of Democrats who say they still don't understand what is on the negotiating table at this point because they haven't seen a full plan from either the Senate Republicans or from the administration. The reality here, though, is a deal is going to be highly unlikely before the new year. And even if Senate Republicans in the White House are able to broker some sort of deal on border security measures in exchange for this aid, as of now, the House does not appear to be planning to return to Washington. So really, we probably wouldn't see a deal signed by the president until at least January.
Right. And Kamlager-Dove seems to be enjoying, despite all what she called kabuki theater, she enjoys her first year and is in it to win it, right? But there are a record number of people leaving Congress. They say because of toxicity and low approval ratings, can't get anything done. How does all that affect the balance of power? What are you seeing there on the Hill?
So let's take a step back and look at what we're going to be coming back to in January, right? Kevin McCarthy leaving Congress actually shrinks the Republican majority down to just 2 votes. That means in the new year, Republican leadership is either going to have to keep the entire conference united to pass any sort of legislation, or it means that Speaker Mike Johnson is going to likely have to rely on Democrats to pass legislation, which will probably, anger those far-right members of his party that ousted Kevin McCarthy in the first place for passing that continuing resolution, that stopgap funding with Democratic support back in September. So next year is going to really have to be the year of compromise to get anything productive done. And the House is already proving to be very unproductive. We've already seen only 22 bills signed into law out of this Congress. The most important thing to remember about the House is that members are elected every 2 years. So the majority party can actually change in the House in 2025 based on the outcome of those 2024 elections. 37 members have announced they'll be retiring from the House in some safe red or blue seats, as well as some toss-ups. So it's going to be interesting to see how these retirements play into that narrative of the 2024 election over the next year.
Amid some of the lowest approval ratings for Congress in our history. All right, Cassie Simeon reporting for us live from Washington, D.C. on a Friday morning. Thanks for your insight.